Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and this video we're breaking down The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 6. Directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, this sees her doing her third Mandalorian episode after she also sat in the chair for Chapter 4 and Chapter 11. Bryce always brings something big with her, and her father of course also directed Solo, making this family almost as important as the Skywalkers are. Bryce directed the first appearance of Bo too, and she's very much bringing things full circle from that initial entry. Titled the Heiress, we're now seeing Bo grow into a lineage, and it's making for a great character arc. After this week, we have just 2 entries remaining, with us getting the penultimate episode next time before the finale that comes the Wednesday after. There's a lot of things going down, and in this video, we're going to be going through the Easter eggs, hidden details, and things you missed, along with our theories. Make sure you smash the thumbs up button if you enjoy the video, and please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss us like a stormtrooper. Out the way, because I always miss, don't they? Out of the way, thanks for clicking the video. Now let's get into The Mandalorian. Now last week saw Navarro being overrun by Captain Gorian's forces. Desperate for help, Greef Karga reached out to the New Republic, which we saw was slowly being overrun by the amount of bureaucracy that they now had to handle. Though the rebels did a great job of taking down the Empire, great job, the Resistance simply didn't have the means to actually run a government without the Jedi's help, and thus the First Order started to rise up in the fractures. Captain Teva ended up going to the Mandalorians for help, and we watched as they returned home to the planet Navarro. This is where we first met them in Season 1, and after beating Gorian, they were given a piece of land that they could finally call home. The armor had a quiet word with Bo Katan, and she said that she actually believed that she'd seen a mythosaur, and that she was the chosen one who could unite the Mandalorians. They're people that have been racked with civil wars for centuries, and I generally think that the civil war's gotten out of hand. Ha ha! Anyway, Bo removed her helmet to show that this is the way, and out in space, we saw as Teva discovered that the rumours of Moff Gideon's death had been greatly exaggerated. I've seen a lot of theories online saying that this is where Cara Dune was killed, and that would give an in-universe reason for why she's no longer in the show. I'm not sure how much I dig that, but I don't really think Disney are going to go back and rehire her, so who knows if this will be revealed to be her fate at some point. Gonna be kickoffs either way, so we're moving on and getting to episode 6. Now we start off in space and see a giant ship designed to look almost like a shellfish. This is quite fitting too, as it contains Quarrens on it, which are aquatic life forms from the planet Moncala. Alongside the calamari, they'd had civil wars for centuries, and whereas they formed off into their own more peaceful species, the Quarren always tended to be the bad guys. Now we discover that this group have a bounty on their head because of a Mon Calamari who's angry that Captain Shuggoth was shugging her son. We discover that the Quarrens finally have peace with their rivals, and this is very much a Romeo and Juliet story in which 2 people from opposing sides have fallen in love. I love how the captain's in a water tank, and you can even see her seat inside of it when she's floating around. Now we discover early on that they're returning to Trask, and this is the same location that Mando met Bo at during the Heiress episode. Imperial seemingly arrive, and the first clue that this might not be what it seems is that this is actually Moff Gideon's Class 546 light cruiser. We then get the return of several characters from the Heiress episode, including Axe Woves and Koska Reeve. They demand the guy back, and we get a kind of goofy Doctor Who opening to the entry that also goes a bit goofy, I'll be honest. Either way, they take him in, and we cut to the guns to higher title before we get Bo and Co venturing out in her gauntlet to Plazier 15. Plazier means pleasure, which this entire place really is, and everyone's just chilling out, maxing and relaxing, and Jack Blacksing, and axing.
But I'm not a rapper.
Travelling to a platform, we see her old group as they go in, and discover that they've been lying low on an independent planet. To me, this planet very much represents a vision of what Mandalore could look like, and it's basically one of those society if heavy spoilers didn't exist memes. There's a giant dome in the middle, much like the Sundari, and also a monorail as well as some ebony droids. This denotes that they're Imperial, and it's clear that the planet is very much using the older aspects of their arsenal to build something better. This is why they have Star Destroyers and droids like this greeting people to arrive. The protocol droid we meet is RA7, and these gained the nickname Insect Droids due to their facial features. Used heavily on the Death Star, they've often appeared throughout the saga, and this is normally to denote Imperial superiority. You also see later on that the guards with Jack Black are wearing Stormtrooper uniforms, hammering home this idea that it's good to recycle. Now inside the monorail car, they have to show their chain codes, and these are basically just a form of ID. We hear there's been new Coruscant Accords passed through the galaxy, and this means that people have to identify themselves before going into peacekeeping zones. It's very much like what the Imperials used to do when they'd force people to show their papers, you know what that's a reference to, and it also shows the useless bureaucracy that the Republic have enforced in the galaxy. They're more worried about stuff like this than pirates in the First Order, and this is why their vision of the galaxy ended up failing. Now, why Bo is such an important character to put at the forefront is because she's very much walked the line between the two sides. Bo comes from the royal family of Mandalore, but she's also been impoverished. She's been a part of the Death Watch, switched sides when Darth Maul took over, led the Night Owls, and also her own smaller sect. She's now also been part of the Children of the Watch and has walked among them too. Bo has seen firsthand her sister Satine's stance of pacifism, and she's also held the Darksaber as well. Bo is very much your ideal candidate for leadership because she's seen almost every walk of life and she understands how every creed works. I don't want to get crazy political, mate, but I will say that I tend to trust leaders who've actually lived the life of the people that they're judging and not the super rich megalords who don't know how to fill up a car at a petrol station. So I think that Bo really works well as the leader, but unfortunately she's dealing with Mandalorians. Unfortunately, it's in their nature to fight one another, and this is because of their warrior lifestyle. The reason people stopped following her in the first place was because she didn't get the Darksaber in combat, and though she was seen as a false leader by many. Mandalorians demand a strong leader up at the front of them, and this ties all the way back to Mandalore the Great, who pretty much set the path that they now follow. Now, this idea of a Mandalorian leader having walked several ways of life is also something that we've seen in Tar Vizsla. At one point, the Mandalorians and Jedis were enemies, but Tar rose up as a Jedi Mandalorian and he united the two sides. He was the one who created the Darksaber that brought everyone together, and this was due to him knowing both the Jedi and also the Mandalorians. Thus, Bo could do the same thing, and her being selected as leader is very important. As long as Mando plays along too, which I think he will, we are going to see a very strong leader in her. Possibly. We will see how that goes, but unfortunately, I also think they haven't stopped the divisions that could end up rising once more in the future.
See you, chump.
Now, they arrived to find a big banquet led by Jack Black and Lizzo. Kinda jumped the shark a bit here, mate, didn't you? And yeah, I'll guess we'll see what the internet reaction to this is. Now, at the table, we can catch lots of different species, including an Ithorian, some Celestials, and the same species as the Frog Lady, who again, Heiress episode. Jack Black wants to address the banter in the room, and that is why the fuck is Jack Black and Lizzo in Star Wars? Sorry, losing myself a bit there. Anyway, the banter in the room is of course a play on the phrase elephant in the room, and banthers themselves were based on mammoths, which were the precursors to elephants. Now, it turns out that he was an Imperial during the war, but we see that the amnesty program has accepted him back. You might notice that he has an amnesty lapel on his top, and huge shoutouts to Ryan Airy for pointing out that this is actually an A in Arabesh. Now, we didn't mention this last week, but Ryan Airy, bloody Ryan Airy, pointed out that Carson and Zeb could be members of Blue Squadron. This group have featured at several points in the saga, including the Battle of Endor and many of the dogfights we've seen. Now, just to clear up another thing from last week, we pointed out the Rancor patch on Tiva's uniform, which we've now had cleared up. Paul Sun-Hung Lee plays the character, and it was revealed that he actually helped design his character's costume. Originally, his bomber jacket had several different custom patches on it, and these were all designed by the actor. The Rancor was originally supposed to be a bulldog, but in order to make it more in line with Star Wars, they changed it to the Beast. They also originally thought of doing a Rancor claw instead, but they settled on the head in the end. Anyway, back to Jack Black, and he's helped to rebuild the planet, showing what the amnesty program has done. Again, this entire planet's repurposing things from the Imperials, and every aspect of it carries over something from what's come before. As an ex-Imperial though, he's not allowed to create his own army, and thus he's had to hire the Mandalorians to protect over the planet. Now, you might notice that when Lizzo's sitting down that there's this big hologram flower thing, and we see this trolling behind her as she walks along later on. We learn that Jack Black got in with her because she was one of the royal family, and they fell in love and started holding democratic elections. This led to them still being in charge, but they're very pompous, and yeah, what the f they're doing in Star Wars? Now, Lizzo's character is called the Duchess, and Bo's sister Satine was one of these as well. They are very much pacifists too, and they don't allow blasters to be brought into the city. Jack Black's character is called Bombardier, and this typically refers to either a member of a bombing crew or a non-commissioned officer put in charge of artillery. Now, it turns out that they have a bit of a problem, and some of the droids have ended up malfunctioning. They've tried to reform our battle droids, but now they've risen up, and Bo and Mando have been picked to take them down. Now from here we cut to Christopher Lloyd, who's in our third big cameo of the entry. Always nice seeing this guy back, and he talks about how the droids were saved from being scrapped on Carthon. Now this is actually a prison moon, and it contained the Carthon chop fields, which is where droids were destroyed and also dismantled. You could call it the Carthon warehouse, but the reason the droids are rebelling is revealed to us later on. They're very much used as slaves, and though they don't say this specifically, there are a lot of nods to Blade Runner in this episode, which I'll be talking about later on. In that the replicants were sick of being used, having these short lifespans, and this is very much the case with the droids as well. They get their minds wiped over and over and over, and don't really get free will as they're constantly swapping sides. We see the havoc they've unleashed, and you can also catch an M68 land speeder that's being crashed. This is the same model as the one Han had at the start of Solo, and we learn that it's a widespread problem. A coup droid or COO droid also goes berserk as well, and it spins its knives around similar to what one did in the Book of Boba Fett. Might be reaching here, but it looks like one of the customers is wearing the carpet from The Shining, and with this being a bar scene, it might be a reference to that. Might not be, but I see the Shining carpet everywhere these days, and I just can't avoid it mentally. Now they can't shut them off because people are so reliant on droids now that they've become useless. It's very much us seeing the future of humanity before we're all wiped out by rogue AI. Yay! Chatbot, come make my job completely useless. Now they're then directed to Ugnaughts, and this is the same species as Queel. They also appeared as one of the pirates on Gordian's ship, and this one was dressed like Smee from Peter Pan. Masters when it comes to droids, they first showed up in the saga on Cloud City, and were the reason that C-3PO got dismantled. In the room you can catch super battle droids as well, and building off the back of the Bad Batch, there's very much the idea that the Separatists were actually the good guys. In a way. Now the Ugnaughts ignore all forms of royalty and titles, and it's not until Mando steps forward and says that he knows Queel that they look up. Using their catchphrase "I have spoken," it gets our attention, and I'm sure they reused some of the Queel masks and just banged sideburns on them. I know it was you. Now they deny that they're the reason the droids are malfunctioning, and because Mando treats them with the respect he had for Queel, they give him a way to track the rogues. At the loading dock we see more super battle droids, and there's definitely this feeling of unease throughout this scene. Now the main reason Mando didn't trust droids in the first place was because when he was younger, they of course attacked his home. This feeling was felt by many people throughout the galaxy, as droids were of course used for oppression during the Clone Wars. This is why droids were banned from the Mos Eisley Cantina, and it took people a long time to get over the fact that they were used to disrupt most people's way of life. They go to the head battle droid foreman, and Mando starts to try and tick them off to see if they react. Eventually he fishes one out, and again, we get a sort of riff on Blade Runner with Mando chasing his target through a crowded street. Blade Runner's on my mind a lot as we've just finished a big breakdown of it, which will be dropping on the channel on Saturday if you're not a member. If you are a member, then it's out now, and if you want to support the channel, just click the join button below. Just costs 99 cents. You'll get to see that video early, which it's worth it, I promise. Thanks. Now eventually they take the droid down with a crime scene being created by some constable droids. Instead of yellow tape, we get a hologram shooting up. I love when Star Wars transforms things from real life. Again, it's similar to Zora's death in Blade Runner, and Bo ends up discovering a spark pad on it, leading them to a droid bar called the Resistor. It's a nice little punny play on words. Now, a resistor is a device that restricts the flow of a current, and to resist, of course, means to rise up. In the streets, you might also notice that there's a lot of droids, and this shows how integrated into the society that they are. Inside the bar, we see an RIC-920, and this was what carried Anakin and Padme about on Tatooine. We also catch a white droid, and this is the CZ-1 model, which first appeared in A New Hope. We then can see an RX-24 as Bo and Mando walk in, and these were first introduced in Galaxy's Edge. I love the record skip moment, and it kinda reminded me a lot of the opening of American Werewolf in London, or any time that I've walked into a non-spoiler review bar. Mando and Bo do the whole good cop, bad cop routine, using fear to try and get answers. The droids possess fear too, and they worry that if the uprisings continue, that they're gonna be wiped out due to how unwieldy they are. Droids make a good workforce because they obey, but the second that they stop doing that, then it's gonna be curtains for them. We get more shots of the bar and can also catch a droid holding a sabacc card, which is basically the Star Wars equivalent of poker. There's also an EV droid as well, which was used as Jabba's tortured droid. It paints them out as being sympathetic, and even though a lot of them were separatist Imperials, they just want to be alive and have a purpose. Really makes you start to see them in a new life, and it made me sort of think, are we the bad guys? And the bartender mentions Nepanthe being served in the bar. Though it's been used on machines here, the wood itself actually pulls from an ancient potion that was used to relieve pain, sorrow, grief, and also suffering. This is what reprogrammed the droids, and yeah, it wasn't the Ugnaughts who f***ed up. I won't have anyone being racist about those little Ugnaughts. You f***ing hear? I have spoken. This episode is very much a sort of detective noir story in which we get the pair investigating what's going on, and we see the classic body slab scene. This is something that also popped up in Blade Runner 2049, and it's a staple in stories like this where they're almost becoming a cliche. A repurposed torture droid is then brought in to drain fluid from the recent resistor, and this causes it to end up attacking them. We see Mando is getting a bit more to grips with the Darksaber, and though Bo gets it back at the end of the episode, I don't think that's the last time that Mando will hold it. I can actually imagine him getting it back in further episodes, and like I said before, that there is sort of this civil war ingrained into the Mandalorians. Now we get another Blade Runner 2049 nod when they start to scan the substance. In the film they looked at Rachel's bones and zoomed in to find a serial number denoting that she was a replicant. Here though they discover a chain code, and this allows them to start to track its origin. They also do the cliche thing with the scientists where they brush it to the side, and it's the character that spots what's actually going on. There's also mention of the Techno Union, and this is a group that first appeared in Attack of the Clones. Now it turns out there's been some underhanded dealings from Commissioner Hellgate, and we discover that he brought them in illegally. Hellgate might be a play on Hell's Gate, and how he could open up everything and bring it all down. Now they go back to the future, Ristic control room, which is where the truth is finally revealed. He holds his hand over a big red button, and this can turn them back to being battle droids, which will wipe out the population. Now this is clearly similar to Order 66, and though clones were thought to be better than droids, we saw firsthand how much they could be programmed too. In the end, this and the cost were why the Imperials moved away from using them, and we discovered that Hellgate was in fact a separatist. Getting political, mate, you know we hate that on the channel, and they take him down by using a stun blast on him. Cut back to the Garden Bowls, and we see Grogu using the Force to help out the Duchess. Now Mando and Bo arrive with Hellgate, and he says this.
If that isn't the Quacta calling the stifling slimy.
This is not only a play on the phrase the pot calling the kettle black, but it's also an in-universe reference to this.
Well, if that isn't the Quacta calling the stifling slimy. If that's not the Quacta calling the stifling slimy.
Now Hellgate has clearly lived on the planet for a while, and he sees the life that they've given to the population has been something that's forced it to decline. Hellgate apologizes to the Duchess and asks for her grace, and man's gonna be out in no time with these soft, bloody, woke PC liberals that just love letting people get away with stuff. Now he's exiled to the moon of Paraquat for the time being, but my guess is that he's going to be back at some point. Bo is then given the key to the city, and this is handed over by a BNI droid, or bunny if you're me. Grogu is knighted too, and though this doesn't make him a Jedi Knight, it's pretty f***ing close. Now it is possible one day that Grogu might even become the leader of Mandalore itself. He of course has a very long lifespan, and being part of the Jedi as well will allow him to become almost like Tar Vizsla. Yoda was on the Jedi Council for centuries, and this allowed him to have a wisdom that very few others possessed. If we think about what Mandalore's going to look like in 100 years from now, then all of these characters will be dead, whereas Grogu will still be classed as being very young. Therefore, they might even end up appointing him as a leader sometime down the line, and I think that would be such a cool direction to take his character in. Anyway, they head out to the old crew, and Bo shows that she's very much got imposter syndrome and wrestles with what to do when they arrive. Everyone's just kinda hanging out, drinking tea and playing catch, but they get a frosty reception when it comes to Axe.
But I'm not a rapper.
Bo challenges him and the pair duke it out, and I kinda wish that this was the main focus of the episode. Droids worrying about being replaced by humans is a nice play on how humans worry about being replaced by AI, but they didn't explore it to the extent that I think it was justified spending that much time with it. I wish we had more of a focus on the Mandalorian infighting like this and showed the politics, even though I hate politics. The Bo wins, but Axe says that no one will follow her as long as she doesn't hold the Darksaber. She gives her "We are stronger together" speech and definitely shows that she wants to unite everyone by openly accepting Mando. He goes to give her the Darksaber again, and she very much references Sabine, who too gifted her it in Rebels. It has to be won in combat though, or taken another way, beyond just being handed over from one to another. However, on a technicality, he talks about episode 2 and brings up how he was held hostage. She took it during that episode and saved Mando, and thus she defeated the enemy that defeated him, meaning that she now has it. She's once more moving further up the chain, and at this point she has all the pieces in place to become the leader of Mandalore. Now interestingly, I did think that we'd learn from these exactly what happened with Moff Gideon last week. His ship was ambushed by Mandalorians, and when we start off with them, I assumed that they'd be revealed to be the ones behind the attack on the shuttle. He still hasn't popped up, but I do feel like him and the Amnesty Act have loomed largely over the season, even if they've always just kind of been in the background. The Amnesty Act meant that many soldiers could swap sides, and this was similar to Operation Paperclip after the Second World War. This allowed some of the Nazi scientists to come to America, and it's a similar setup to what we had in the case of Dr. Pershing. Like the Nuremberg trials though, those complicit in war crimes were sent before judges and juries in order to decide what was going to happen to them. Moff Gideon is up there as some of the worst Imperial officers in the galaxy, and though we don't know his entire backstory, there are minor things we've been told. Gideon actually made a name for himself by working in the ISB, and this is an organisation that we've seen in Andor and the Bad Batch. Through this, he was heavily complicit in the Great Purge, and this saw Mandalorians being murdered in their millions. Once the planet had been ransacked, he then got his hands on the Darksaber, and he attained the rank of Moff in 9 ABY. He was almost also put on trial for war crimes then, but he faked his own death in order to escape persecution. He's very much had his hand in several things, and he's a key component in how the First Order rose up. Gideon, of course, quote-unquote looked after Navarro, and their independence is something that the First Order weaponized. Throughout the galaxy, they actually used examples of how incompetent that the Republic was to get independent planets to secretly invest in them in the promise that they could return law and order to the galaxy. Whether this is spelled out in the show does remain to be seen, but I think it's an important thing to bear in mind when we're discussing the series. Now, as for my thoughts on this episode, I'm sure you can tell I didn't really enjoy it all that much. I think the cameos just kind of took me out of it, and though I'm sure Lizzo's a great person, and her fans definitely love this, when it comes to Star Wars, I'm not sure if it feels like it's fitting for this universe. It's the same with Jack Black, and though, I love the guy, I like Lizzo's music as well. Sometimes I'll have it on the radio in the background. Don't dislike the video. I think having them pop up and be these goofy kind of characters almost took away from the tone that this season's been aiming for. This has been very serious and sincere, and to just have this goofy episode, though it's fun, I'm not sure if it aligned with my sensibilities. It is pretty much just coming down to that. I know I'm looking on Twitter right now and there's lots of people who've had a lot of fun with it. But for me, I wish the focus was more on the serious stuff that we got towards the end. Online, I'm seeing that lots of people are saying that it's basically like a Clone Wars episode, but even if it was ranked amongst those, I'd probably put it amongst the bottom. The Clone Wars has some great episodes that take things seriously, and this would be, to me at least, one of the more goofy filler ones. We've got 8 episodes this season. To me, you've just wasted one. So let's see how they do over the next 2. Please be good. Now, saying that, there was some great character development here, and it's nice just watching Bo and Mando work together. You can really see how they're the kind of yin to each other's yang, and whereas Mando was filling in bits with the Ugnaught, Bo had to come in and kind of settle him down in other areas. They both work together really well, and if people start to ship them after this episode, I can definitely see why. So do I think it was a great episode? No, I think it was probably the worst one in the season so far, but saying that, we've had a really solid season, and let's see what they do over the next 2 weeks and how this leaves the series. I think so far season 2 is still sitting pretty high up as my favourite out of the Star Wars shows, but let me know below exactly what you think. Also, I just want to give a huge apology to everyone who was getting into our Bad Batch breakdowns. I really wish I had the hours to cover absolutely everything, but unfortunately, when things get too full on, it's difficult to organise things around it. With Bad Batch and Mando releasing at the same time on the same day, it's really tough doing 2 jobs at once, and Bad Batch was unfortunately a casualty of this when it came to our schedule. I will say that Ryan Airy did some brilliant breakdowns on it as well, so if you want to watch some good ones, then definitely head over to his channel. And dislike it. I got you son of a bitch. I got you in there and you
Shut the f*** up, Ryan Airy!
Obviously, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode as well, so make sure you comment below and let me know. We are in a competition right now giving away the Superman 4K box set to 3 subscribers on the 15th of April, and all you have to do to be on the chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the episode. We pick the comments at random on the 15th, and the winners of the last one are on screen right now, so if that's you, then message me on Twitter at Heavy Spoilers. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our breakdown of one of the trailers released this week. There's been a ton of them, So yeah, one of them will be on screen right now, and it's been selected by YouTube as being perfect for you. So yeah, definitely head over there right after this. I'll see you next time. You take care of yourself. Peace.